The little girl I picked up on the street opened her mouth and called me mom. But can someone tell me, how does an underage girl who still relies on her mom for everything suddenly have a kid? Is this the painless motherhood everyone envies? I looked at the little girl clinging to my thigh and crying her eyes out, my head throbbing. Then I looked at my mom, who was staring at me like it was none of her business, and I finally couldn't hold back. Is this really not your secret second child? Tell me the truth, I can handle it. Right now, I could handle anything, except the fact that this little girl's tears were slowly soaking through my sweatpants. Mommy, please don't abandon your sweetie. This little girl was quite good at reading the room. She tilted her head up to look at me, terrified that I would leave her behind. I reached out and pushed the little kid's head away. Feeling both disgusted and wronged, I told her a hard truth. I was not her mom. The very next second, I was greeted by the little girl's loud wailing. She cried with such dramatic rhythm. Anyone who didn't know better would think I was some wicked stepmother. No, listen here, kiddo. I won't even be 18 until the end of this year. How old would I have to be to give birth to you? I didn't know where I got the courage to explain the logic to a kid who hadn't even started elementary school. But I just wanted to emphasize over and over again not to go around calling random people mom. Instead, my own mother rolled her eyes at me and told me to shut up with a look of utter disgust. Then she squatted down, held the little girl's shoulders, and affectionately called her sweetie. She guided her to talk about her situation. The little girl picked up a wooden stick from the bushes by the road. She carefully wrote her name on the ground, stroke by stroke. It had snowed lightly in the morning, leaving a thin layer of white on the ground. Following the movement of the stick, I made out 3 large chicken scratch letters, M-I-A. My nickname is Sweetie, as sweet as honey. Mommy says I'm her sweetest candy, and I'm 5 years old this year. When the kid said this, she stared straight at me. It was as if she wanted to find validation from me. I instantly got goosebumps. I couldn't even imagine those words coming out of my mouth. Gross, what do you mean me? I'm not her mom. My mom exaggeratedly praised the kid and finally got to the point. She asked the little one why she thought I was her mom. Our little friend, Sweetie, instantly dropped a rap verse. She rattled off my full name, social security number, phone number, and address all in one breath, without a single mistake. I screamed in my head, no way, what kind of sci-fi plot is this? My mom jumped up, her eyes darting back and forth between me and the kid. Finally, she came to a conclusion. You know what? You two actually look really alike. She looks exactly like you did when you were little. Although my heart skipped a beat at that moment, logic quickly took over. The more I thought about it, the more it felt wrong. Could this be some new type of scam? I secretly pulled out my phone, ready to call the police, because I felt like my mom had already fallen for this trap. She seemed to be really enjoying the thrill of becoming a grandmother early. She couldn't wait to claim the kid as her granddaughter right then and there. I had just typed 3 digits when someone snatched my phone away. 2 absolute menaces, one big and one small, stared straight at me. They both wore the exact same expression of dissatisfaction and grievance. The kid pouted and asked if I was going to send her away. My mom was still adding fuel to the fire on the side, saying I was too cruel. I quickly stopped them and compromised. Fine, I won't make the call, but we have to take this kid to the police station. And what if we go there and they find out you really are her mom? What if we go there and they can't find any information on this kid? Oh, you poor thing, look at your little face, all covered in tears. My mom's barrage of questions left me powerless to fight back. She had a point. Whether they found anything or not, neither outcome seemed normal in our modern, science-driven society. After hesitating again and again, I finally gave in. We would take the kid home first and figure it out later. After getting home, my mom kicked off her shoes and immediately sprinted to her room. The door was locked tight, and no matter how much I knocked, there was no response. During this time, the kid and I had a staring contest for 5 minutes. Then we spent 5 minutes drinking chocolate milk. Finally, after sitting in awkward silence until the whole world felt muted, my mom appeared with a look of sheer excitement. She held her phone in her hand, dancing around as she told me the conclusion of her extensive research. "Baby, listen to Mom. This child is definitely your biological daughter, no doubt about it." I snorted through my nose, not really wanting to engage. My mom was on a roll. She drew a huge circle in the air with her hands and declared with absolute certainty, "Something must have happened last night. Like a planetary alignment or a meteor shower. Sweetie, who is your daughter from the future, time traveled to the present. She relied on the information she remembered to find our house and find you." After she finished, she looked at me with glowing eyes, trying to get me to agree. I sighed helplessly, rubbing my forehead, and sat back down on the sofa. "Mom, please, read fewer fantasy novels." My mom truly lived up to her reputation as a middle-aged woman who could read 20 million-word novels a year. She had probably dug through a lot of her old favorites to find these theories. After all, I had gone through years of mandatory education. The school had taught us about scam prevention multiple times. I really wanted to open the scam alert app on my mom's phone and make her take a good look. But before I could do anything, my mom looked at me like she already knew what I was going to say. "If you really don't believe it, we can find a clinic to do a paternity test. Then we'll have proof when we go to the police." That was actually a pretty good idea. I nodded, "Then let's do that." Before I could even finish my sentence, my mom let out an "oh" and said all those clinics were closed for the holidays. Speechless, she was just talking nonsense and putting on a one-woman show. I pulled out my phone and checked. Several clinics in our area were indeed closed for the holidays. They wouldn't open until a week later. But I was still very hesitant. I kept feeling that having this kid in our house was an unstable factor. Taking her to the police was the right thing to do. All right, sweetie is staying. We'll talk about it after the holidays are over." My mom made the final decision, completely cutting off any chance for me to argue. "Whatever, let her do what she wants. I'm going back to my room then." After saying that, I felt all the energy drain from my body. There was nothing left for me to stress over. On the desk in my room lay the unfinished practice tests from last night and a few open reference books. Sitting back at the desk, the text seemed to turn into an alien language floating in the air. It just wouldn't enter my brain. Frustrated, I covered the tests and books with something else. Out of sight, out of mind. For 2 whole days, I chose to stay in my room. I spent most of my time sitting at my desk, doing practice tests and reviewing textbooks. I only went out to get some fresh air during mealtimes. I would watch my mom and Sweetie eat and argue playfully. Then they would loudly whisper secrets right in front of me, complaining about me being a picky eater. I twitched my mouth, originally wanting to say something. Unfortunately, I just couldn't find the energy to joke around with them. In the end, I gave up, finished my meal, and went back to my room. Suddenly, I felt a wave of depression. I fell straight back onto my bed, staring at the stark white ceiling. Actually, I had always been the golden child growing up. The kind of kid who seemed to easily get good grades. But no one saw the effort I put in behind the scenes. No one would believe that I achieved everything through late-night studying. I always wanted to make my mom proud. After all, life wasn't easy in our neighborhood for a single mom whose husband died early. I could only try my best to be perfect, drawing everyone's attention to me instead. But ever since senior year started, my grades had been dropping straight down. Each time was worse than the last. I didn't know what the reason was. All I could do was study harder to pull my grades back up. But the harder I tried, the worse I did. The more tests I took, the faster my scores dropped. At first, when the results of the monthly exams came out, my mom was in disbelief. We had a few flushed-face arguments about it. But having depended on each other for so many years, we were used to making up the same day we fought. So it didn't have too much of an impact. Until one day, my mom stopped mentioning my scores entirely. She completely dropped the topic. I vaguely guessed why. But the more my mom acted like this, the guiltier I felt. Because I knew in my heart that it was hard for me to snap out of this state of self-sabotage. This bad mood had its grips on me and wouldn't let go. "Mommy," I was startled by the knock on the door, instantly snapping back to reality. "Mommy, it's Sweetie. Can I come in and see you?" The kid didn't seem to know the meaning of giving up. Seeing that I hadn't made a sound, she persistently tried to get a response from me. I climbed out of bed, sat in a daze for a few seconds, and then let out a "yeah." "Come in." Then the bedroom door pushed open, and a little head popped in. Her big eyes darted around, clearly plotting something mischievous. "I'm coming in," the little brat asked. But one foot was already very honestly testing the waters inside the room. "Come in, what is it?" Sweetie brought Mommy some fruit. Mommy's favorite strawberries. She walked in holding a plate, shakily offering it to me. I quickly took it from her. "Can you change what you call me? I really have a hard time accepting the title Mommy." I tried to negotiate with the kid. "Okay, Mommy, what does Mommy want Sweetie to call her?" I was instantly left speechless. I could only sigh and say forget it. I picked up a strawberry. Before I could even put it in my mouth, I saw Sweetie standing right in front of me, staring intently. Feeling embarrassed, I held the strawberry up to her mouth. But she shook her head and refused to eat it. "Mommy, hurry up and eat. After you eat, play with Sweetie." The strawberry that had just entered my mouth instantly lost its sweetness. I knew nothing came for free. I tried to use grown-up logic to convince a kid who was still in kindergarten. I just wanted to get rid of her. But after just 2 sentences, my mom's voice drifted in. "Chloe Jiang." Whenever she called me by my full name, I knew I was doomed. Sure enough, my mom hadn't even finished washing the dishes. She rushed into my room with soapy hands, glaring at me. "How can you be such an irresponsible mother? You won't even play with your own daughter. Even an evil stepmother has more heart than you." But I don't even know if I'm her mom yet. I didn't dare say that out loud. I only dared to complain in my head. "I haven't finished my practice tests yet." My mom rolled her eyes at me. "Today is only the 3rd day of the new year. You still have over 10 days before school starts. Don't make excuses." Who was it that used to say, "When I become a mom, I'll definitely let my child grow up happy"? You haven't even started, and you're already failing. I couldn't believe my mom actually remembered things I said during my edgy middle school phase. And now she was using it as the ultimate weapon against me. It was so embarrassing. "Play with her. When she's tired from playing, it'll be just in time for dinner." My mom issued her final ultimatum. I turned to look at Sweetie. She smiled at me, her eyes full of expectation. I really didn't have the heart to refuse. So I asked her what she wanted to play. "I'd just treat this afternoon as a break." Sweetie immediately patted the bed. After getting my permission, she climbed up and sat next to me. She pulled out a puzzle and said she wanted to do it with me. Kids' interests come and go in a flash. We hadn't even been doing the puzzle for 10 minutes before she started slacking off. She grabbed a fairy tale book and started reading. When she got bored of the pictures, she demanded I tell her a story. I truly felt just how much energy kids have. She had been making a fuss for half the day and was still going strong. I, on the other hand, was completely drained and just wanted to lie down. "Mommy, are you tired? Let Sweetie give you a massage." The person who was just drawing a second ago was now hovering over me, kneading my legs. Her tiny hands felt like a cat scratching. Not gonna lie, it felt pretty good. While massaging, Sweetie didn't forget to praise herself. "Not bad, right? Sweetie's technique is pretty good, isn't it?" I suddenly chuckled. I didn't know who she learned this little adult act from. Could it be from herself? I suddenly became curious about the mom Sweetie was talking about. I really wanted to know what my future self was like. "Sweetie, can you tell me about your mom?" "My mom is you." "Then tell me what my future self is like." Sweetie sighed like a little adult again, rolled over and sat up. She said quite maturely, all right, let me think." I found it funny, but I cooperatively sat up with her and listened intently. The mom Sweetie described was also the perfect mom. She would dress up beautifully every day to go to work. In the evening, she would pick Sweetie up from kindergarten, and all the kids in her class would envy her. I couldn't help but ask again, "So what kind of work does future mom do?" As soon as I asked, I realized it was a mistake. How would a kid know what kind of work adults do? Mommy does the job she loves. Because mommy says going to work makes her very happy, and she gets to do what she loves every day. I briefly fell into deep thought. I really envied this future mom. But with my current state, how could I possibly have a future career? A failed life seemed like the only correct answer. A small hand suddenly cupped my face gently, the warmth of her palm transferring to my skin. I looked down. Sweetie was looking up at me, confusion in her eyes. She said, "Why is mommy unhappy?" "I'm not. Good kids aren't supposed to lie." Sweetie dragged out her words, sounding like she was warning me. "You are unhappy. You only smile in front of me and Grandma. You didn't want to smile, but you smiled anyway." She was only a 5-year-old kid, after all. Her ability to express herself wasn't perfect, but I could understand what she meant. She really was quite sensitive. It hadn't even been that long, and she had already seen through me. I patted her little head and told her this was adult stuff that kids didn't need to understand. Sweetie was probably bluffed by me. She paused for a moment and then went back to her own business. After dinner, to avoid playing with Sweetie, I volunteered to wash the dishes. As a result, I did the chores and enjoyed half an hour of peace. Then she knocked on my bedroom door again, hugging her pillow. She pitifully said she wanted me to sleep with her. I wasn't one to take a bad deal, so I finally made a trade with her. As long as she didn't bother me tomorrow, I would let her sleep in my room. Kids are so easy to fool. She immediately agreed, then quickly crawled under my covers and lay down quietly. Right before falling asleep, I vaguely heard her muttering in my ear. "Mommy smells sweet, like strawberries." She was still craving strawberries. It seemed I had to tell Mom to buy this little glutton some snacks tomorrow. As I thought about this, my consciousness gradually faded. It felt like I had entered another world. I was sitting in a completely sealed white room. I was endlessly filling out practice tests, one after another without stopping. I wanted to stop, but my hands wouldn't listen. My voice was hoarse from crying, constantly screaming that I didn't want to write anymore. "Mommy, Mommy." The white room shook violently. Right before it collapsed, I was pulled out by some unseen force. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I saw was Sweetie. She looked incredibly anxious, slapping my face in fear. She only stopped when she saw I was awake. Did Mommy have a nightmare? My throat was dry and raspy, my lips parched, and I couldn't make a sound. Sweetie changed her approach. She touched my forehead, then stroked my cheek, trying to comfort me like an adult. "Sweetie is patting you. Mommy isn't scared anymore." In that instant, my fear and my helplessness seemed to be patted away by those tiny hands. In the dark, I held back the urge to cry and hugged Sweetie tightly. It took a long time before I managed to squeeze out one phrase. "Thank you." Sweetie naturally nestled back into my arms. "I'll stay with you, then you won't have nightmares anymore." I murmured in agreement and softly called Sweetie's name. I asked her, what if one day in the future I turn out to be a really failed mom? What does failed mean? Failed means not being able to do anything right, not accomplishing anything. It means accepting your fate and giving up. Sweetie took a moment to digest this explanation. She didn't quite agree and immediately retorted. "You're doing great. You play games with me, tell me stories, and even cuddle me to sleep. Sweetie likes it. My teacher says never to give up easily. Sweetie doesn't give up, and you don't give up either. So you are not a failed mom." Sweetie was getting worked up. She slapped my chest with her palm and emphasized her point. "Don't give up, don't fail." At that, I really couldn't hold it in anymore. I let out a laugh and softly replied, "Okay." Sweetie had truly been raised well. The concepts I couldn't wrap my head around came so easily from her mouth, even though she appeared in my life unexpectedly. At this moment, I felt she was destined to be sent to me by heaven. She was like a beam of light shining into the darkest part of my heart, healing me with her warmth. The next morning, I slept in for the first time in ages. Eventually, I was still woken up by Sweetie shouting in various tones. She was already washed, dressed and squatting by my bed, blinking at me. Grandma says we are going out for breakfast today. Mommy, hurry up and get up. My mom popped her head in too. Hurry up, we are going out to buy groceries today. We also need to buy Sweetie some clothes and daily necessities. I yawned and sat up in bed. Still half asleep, I remembered what happened last night. Playfully annoyed, I pinched Sweetie's chubby cheeks. Raising a kid was really too hard. We took a walk outside. Luckily, all the other families in our neighborhood had gone out to visit relatives. No one noticed the extra child in our house. Otherwise, I really wouldn't know how to explain it. By the time we got home, I was completely exhausted. I hadn't even fully stepped inside before Sweetie started fussing for me to help her wash her hands. I couldn't say no to her, so I accompanied her to the sink. Through the mirror, I saw her obediently washing her hands. She was humming a song, a smile on her face. She seemed to not have a single care in the world. I thought, it's so nice to be like that. Mommy, can you watch SpongeBob with me later? I want to watch it, but Grandma doesn't know how. Will you stay with me? Sweetie's pitiful look struck right at my heart. I couldn't refuse. So, instead of going to my room like I was supposed to, I stayed in the living room for once. I put on the cartoon and sat on the sofa to watch it with her. The sound from the TV drifted in and out of my ears. I wasn't clueless. I had seen early on that Sweetie was intentionally trying to get close to me and stick to me. This kind of affection made me a bit uncomfortable, but also felt somewhat natural. So, after not being able to refuse once, there would be countless times I couldn't refuse. The doorbell suddenly interrupted my thoughts, and it also interrupted Sweetie, who was watching her cartoon. We looked at each other, not sure if we should go open the door. Soon, a middle-aged woman's voice came from the door. She intermittently called out, "Sister-in-law. Sister-in-law, are you home? You didn't go out, did you?" I immediately became alert. That sounded like my Aunt Linda. Oh no, someone was visiting right now. What were we going to do about Sweetie? My mom heard the voice and came out. She calmly told me to hide Sweetie in my room to play. I coaxed Sweetie into my room to read a book, repeatedly reminding her not to make a sound. Although Sweetie didn't know what was going on, she sensibly nodded. She obediently lay on the bed and started playing by herself. By the time I went to the living room, Aunt Linda was already sitting on the sofa. When she saw me, her eyes lit up and she affectionately called me by my nickname. "Hi, Aunt Linda, Happy New Year." Aunt Linda seemed fully prepared for this trip. She brought gifts and even stuffed a red envelope into my hand. It was important to note that my dad had been dead for 10 years, and she and I hadn't even met 10 times since. Aunt Linda pulled my mom in for some small talk. The words sounded incredibly fake to me. Something about how her heart ached for me and my mom. After going around in several circles, she finally got to me. She asked how I was doing lately. My mom simply said everything was fine, and that I would be taking my college admissions exams this year. Exams are good, exams are great. But shouldn't we consider keeping our options open? After all, there can be accidents with the exams. As soon as she said this, my mom's face dropped. "What do you mean?" "Oh, it's just that I heard Chloe hasn't been doing very well on her recent tests. As her aunt, I'm just worrying about her future." I suddenly remembered that Aunt Linda's son went to the same school as me. He was just a freshman. But for a freshman to be asking about a senior's grades, that took some real dedication. But Aunt Linda was completely oblivious to my mom's mood. She just kept talking to herself. "Look, Sarah, Chloe is good at math and she's pretty. Even if she doesn't go to college, there are plenty of paths she can take. It just so happens that the factory my husband works with is looking for a capable daughter-in-law to help manage things. If Chloe marries in, she'll be a young madam." Listening to this, I felt like Aunt Linda was completely crazy. She actually came to discuss marriage for someone who wasn't even 18 yet. My mom snatched the cup out of Aunt Linda's hand. She roughly pulled the woman up and dragged her all the way to the door. She fiercely spat, "Get the hell out. Don't ever let me see you again, you piece of trash." "Oh, my sister-in-law, what are you doing?" "I'm just trying to be helpful. You really don't know what's good for you. When your Chloe fails to get into college, Don't come begging me. Truly, even a random dog on the street can bark nonsense. I rushed up to Aunt Linda in 2 or 3 steps. I threw the red envelope she had just shoved into my hand right back at her face. I held back my anger and replied, "Your son is the one who won't get into college. You had to pay to get him into high school, and you have the nerve to talk." Aunt Linda was instantly furious, patting her chest and calling me poorly raised. My mom took the opportunity to toss the gifts out the door as well. Then she pushed Aunt Linda out and slammed the door shut. Aunt Linda started cursing through the metal door, dropping all pretenses. She called my mom heartless. She said my mom had kept the old couple's demolition relocation house all to herself and left them with no way to live. In the end, my mom had to call building management to get Aunt Linda kicked out. The house returned to quiet. My mom told me not to worry and not to take Aunt Linda's words to heart. I asked my mom what was going on with the relocation house. Only then did my mom tell me that my grandparents' detached house was going to be demolished. They planned to keep one apartment for themselves and turn the rest into a cash settlement to leave for me. The other 2 aunts only knew that the house belonged to their parents and thought they were entitled to a share. But they didn't know that my mom and dad had built that house with their own money after they got married. So the ownership rights belonged entirely to my mom and dad. Aunt Linda's stunt today was nothing more than an attempt to marry me off. Then she could coax the relocation money out of my grandparents. She even went as far as inquiring about my situation and using my grades as an excuse. Suddenly, I felt a wave of sadness. I thought to myself, if I really had no grades and no future, would I end up living a life arranged by someone else? After I returned to my room, Sweetie looked at me without saying a word. She cautiously asked if I was unhappy. I wasn't exactly unhappy. But I uncontrollably sat down at my desk and picked up the practice tests again. As long as I did a few more problems, I wouldn't have to think about all this mess. After that, Sweetie didn't dare make a sound. She just quietly flipped through her book. She waited all the way until my mom called us out for lunch. After waking up from her nap following lunch, Sweetie came looking for me again. She knocked on the door for a long time before I heard her. I snapped out of a math problem I hadn't been able to figure out for 20 minutes. I found a trace of reality. Sweetie said my mom was busy cleaning and wanted me to go find her best friend with her. Then she matter-of-factly stated that her best friend was the tabby cat down by the flower bed. I knew that cat. It always used to pretend to be injured to get food from me. Sweetie was probably its new target. Although I still had a massive pile of tests to do, I stretched my neck. Subconsciously, the word okay slipped out of my mouth. I had been working for so long and hadn't even finished a single page. I might as well go outside and move around a bit. Sweetie seemed very familiar with the tabby cat. I was quite impressed that she had built such a friendship in such a short time. After feeding the cat, she even said a bunch of things to it that I couldn't understand. Finally, she reluctantly headed home. Mostly because my mom had warned us not to stay out too long, or the neighbors might ask questions. Perhaps getting outside and breathing some fresh air really helped me relax. When Sweetie came to my room hugging her pillow again that night, I happily agreed to her request to sleep together. However, I told her she had to wait until I finished listening to my English short stories. Sweetie was instantly interested and said she wanted to do it with me. So my evening English listening practice turned into the tape recorder playing one sentence, and Sweetie clumsily imitating it. As if she was afraid I couldn't hear clearly, she earnestly studied the short dialogues. She amused me so much that I had to temporarily stop. I told her it was time for bed. Before I turned off the light, Sweetie suddenly squeezed my hand. "I'll tell you a bedtime story." I laughed at her. "All right, tell me one." And so, Sweetie's little mouth got to work. From a princess falling in love with a royal guard, to a flower-picking girl deciding to go pick mushrooms instead. Every story she told was completely unexpected. I lost all my sleepiness and asked her what the moral of these stories was. Sweetie thought for a moment and said, "They tell us that everyone has their own choices and their own life. Who says we have to be just like the people in the books? We're not characters in a book. Bang, the door to my room flew open. What time is it? Why aren't you asleep? My mom roared. I quickly pulled the covers over myself and Sweetie. We're sleeping, we're sleeping. The room plunged back into darkness. Not long after, the steady sound of Sweetie's breathing reached my ears. Yeah, even a little kid understands this logic. Why couldn't I? Watching Sweetie fall fast asleep, I, on the other hand, had no desire to sleep at all. I carefully climbed out of bed, sat back down at my desk, and picked up the test I had been working on that afternoon. I didn't try to mentally prepare myself. And I wasn't repeatedly interrupted by my own thoughts. This time, I finished an entire test in one breath, finding that feeling I used to have. The feeling of resisting the questions, of fearing mistakes, was gone. Even when I checked my answers, I found my accuracy rate was at its peak for this period. My nose stung, and the hand holding the pen trembled uncontrollably. I really didn't know whether to cry or laugh. I steadied my breathing, gently opened the drawer on my left. I pulled it all the way out and extracted a green notebook from the very back. It was my middle school notebook. Although it had long since lost its usefulness, I had always kept it. It diligently acted as a guardian deep within my drawer. Because hidden inside was a diagnosis report I didn't dare face. Actually, after a few exams in my senior year, I realized my state of mind and body weren't quite right. Because I had argued with my mom those few days, I went to the hospital alone. I wasn't surprised by the doctor's conclusion. At the time, they only said it was mild anxiety and depression. They told me to adjust my emotions and not put too much pressure on myself. But strangely, after that, I became increasingly unable to control my negative emotions. When it was severe, my body even reacted physically. I didn't dare go back to the hospital, nor did I dare ask the doctor what to do. And I certainly didn't dare tell my mom. I wanted to tell her several times, but the words would just stick in my throat. I wasn't brave enough back then, didn't dare to face myself. But now, I couldn't be like this anymore. I had my mom, I had Sweetie, I had the best of everything in this world. I shouldn't have constantly suppressed myself from the beginning. That wouldn't have caused my condition to worsen later on. My mom might seem loud and prone to arguing with me. She might always complain that I wasn't acting like a proper girl. But I knew she would secretly cry for me. When she thought of my dad, who passed away years ago, she would mutter about how well I was doing now. Perhaps now was the best time to tell her. After breakfast the next morning, I wasn't in a hurry to go back to my room. After taking the vitamins my mom gave me, I slowly wandered outside the kitchen, sighing and pacing back and forth. Even though I had mentally prepared myself, when it actually came time to say it, I hesitated again. My mom rolled her eyes at me and told me to spit it out. But the words just wouldn't come out. Mom, actually I had just organized my words when my mom took off her apron and interrupted me. Stop talking nonsense, go pack your bags. We're catching a flight this afternoon. Ah, I quickly asked, a flight, where are we going? I'm taking you, you're taking Sweetie, the three of us are going to Florida. Seriously, I grabbed my mom and told her to stop joking. My mom pulled out her phone to show me the booking information. I just managed to snag the tickets last night, hurry up, we're leaving in an hour. During the New Year holidays, flights to Florida were insanely expensive. And my mom had just casually bought 3 of them. As soon as Sweetie heard we were going to Florida, she excitedly spun in circles around me. She kept shouting, we're going to see the ocean. I belatedly went back to my room and started packing my suitcase. When I finally snapped out of it, I realized my suitcase was full of winter coats and sweatpants. I quickly pulled them out and repacked with summer clothes. I suddenly remembered around this time last year. I had excitedly held my red envelope money and confidently declared that I would take my mom to the beach after my college exams. I just never expected that it would be my mom taking me, and a mini version of myself fulfilling this wish first. I don't know how I finished packing, nor how I got on the plane. I felt out of it the whole trip, like my soul was drifting outside the real world. It was the salty sea breeze and the warm sand that brought me back to reality. The sound of the crashing waves suddenly hit my ears, followed closely by Sweetie's excited voice. "Chloe, look at my big castle." I was still confused as to why Sweetie had started calling me by my name. In the blink of an eye, she ran off. She stomped in the seawater and played with the waves. Not long after, she waved me over. I brushed off the sand and walked towards her. "It's a seashell." I looked closely. A corner of a seashell, hidden in the sand, was poking out. I picked it up, washed it in the seawater, and handed it to Sweetie. Sweetie looked at it for a couple of seconds, then handed it back to me. "This is your seashell. You are just as pretty as the seashell." Such a sweet talker, she easily convinced me to build another sandcastle with her. By the time Sweetie and I were both exhausted from playing, my mom finally reappeared. She brought us both some water. The three of us sat on the beach, each holding a coconut, watching the sun slowly dip into the ocean. "Mr. Sun is getting off work, Tilda." I felt incredibly relaxed and replied to Sweetie, "Yeah, Mr. Sun will come play with Sweetie again tomorrow." Actually, in this moment, I had already found my courage. I decided that tonight, I would confess everything to my mom. "Mommy," Sweetie suddenly yelled. Before I could even ask her what was wrong, I saw her sprint away. My first instinct was to grab her. But halfway through turning, I saw Sweetie run into another woman's arms, hugging and kissing her. The daughter who called me Mommy was calling someone else Mommy. I was definitely a bit stunned, not knowing what was going on. Sweetie ran back over at some point, giggling and calling me Chloe. The man and woman who had come over also called my mom, Sarah, in unison. "Chloe, this is your cousin's family. Sweetie is their child." Theirs, I was a bit confused. Then "I'm sorry, Chloe, from the beginning. This was all just an act I put on." "An act?" My mom didn't immediately explain it to me. Instead, she sent Sweetie's family off first and took me back to our room. After we sat down, my mom finally confessed what was going on. It turned out my mom had known about my condition for a long time. She said she was cleaning my room that day and saw that the drawer wasn't sliding smoothly. She thought she'd fix it, but ended up pulling the whole drawer out. The contents spilled all over the floor, and that's how she saw the diagnosis report. At first, she didn't believe it. She took a picture of it, put the drawer back together, and went to the hospital to ask. After getting confirmation, it took her a long time to recover from the shock. I suddenly realized that the time my mom started being completely agreeable perfectly matched when she learned the truth. And after that, she started casually paying more attention to me. That was also when she suddenly bought me those vitamins and watched me take them every day. I asked my mom, "Those vitamins I've been taking, they were medication, weren't they?" My mom nodded. "I thought that if you took the medicine and I spent more time with you, you'd get better quickly. But I noticed you were acting more and more strange. Until this winter break, when you locked yourself in your room every day. I didn't dare imagine what would happen to you. I just wanted to hold on to you at all costs. Chloe, Mom really can't live without you." My mom was so afraid something would happen to me that she came up with such a ridiculous plan. "Mom, even though I've considered countless possibilities, I never once thought about leaving you. It's the same for me, I can't live without you." I held my mom's hand and told her. Even when I was sick, even when I had countless desperate thoughts, whenever I thought of her, I would immediately regret ever having those thoughts. My mom wiped her tears. She told me she had remembered my past speeches about being a good mother. She thought that I would be willing to stay and get better out of a sense of responsibility. So she started looking for kids around who looked like me when I was little. It just so happened that Sweetie was a relative's child and fit the criteria. She was sweet-talking and smart. After my mom coached her a few times, she knew exactly what her mission was. And that's how this whole future daughter comes back to find her mom drama started. That night, my mom and I both cried our eyes out. When we woke up the next day, we could barely open our eyes and couldn't help but burst out laughing. With that laugh, I seemed to expel all the suffocating emotions that had been pressing down on my body. An unprecedented feeling of relief returned. I suddenly stopped my mom. I feel much better. When we get back, can you go see a doctor with me? My mom paused for a moment, then choked back a sob and replied, Yes, of course. Mom will go with you when we get home. Once everything was out in the open, Sweetie didn't need to play the role of my future daughter anymore. Only then did I belatedly remember the few times she had called me Chloe. I should have realized something was wrong back then. But I was truly grateful for Sweetie's company. So for those few days in Florida, I played with her and humored her endlessly. She was having so much fun she forgot all about home. Right before she left, she even asked if I could come to her house and be her big sister. My nose stung. I squatted down to eye level with her, touched her little braids, and held her small hands. Finally, I hugged her little body, reluctant to let her go. I told her, I am your big sister. You can come play with me anytime. Sweetie's family was leaving today because of their schedule. Kids love to play, and when it was time to leave, her pout could hang a bottle. She was still unhappy right before getting into the car. I waved at them and watched the car door slowly close. But the very next second, the car door suddenly opened again, and a figure darted out. Sweetie ran back to me like a little cannonball. She hugged my leg tightly and called me Chloe. This scene perfectly mirrored how she had rushed out and called me mommy a few days ago. She waved her small hands, saying she wanted to tell me a secret. I led her a few steps away, letting her tell me her secret comfortably. Chloe, don't stay up late anymore when you get home. Your eyes will hurt if you do homework too late. Sweetie had a dream yesterday. I dreamed that my big sister took her college exams and got a lot of points. Everyone was so happy. Sweetie doesn't lie, Sweetie's dreams all come true. So don't give up, big sister, you are the best. Sweetie hugged my neck, her voice softening. If you have nightmares again, remember to call Sweetie. Sweetie will sing to you. After saying that, she thoughtfully wiped my tears away. Yeah. I struggled for a long time before managing to squeeze out that single sound. Then Sweetie is going home now. Bye-bye to Chloe and Aunt Sarah. I forced myself not to make a sound, watching their car drive away. I don't know when my mom walked up beside me. She put her arm around my shoulders and pulled me tightly into her embrace. Chloe, it's Mom's first time being a mom. I'm definitely not an excellent mom. So you don't have to be so excellent either. Mom just wants you to be happy and healthy, that's enough. In Mom's heart, you've always been a perfect daughter. I hugged my mom back. Mom, in my heart, you're a perfect mom too.